Today we're going to talk about how to measure soil moisture in an orchard or a field. And this can be really important because knowing what the soil moisture is going to help you decide when and how long, how much to irrigate. So we have a number of tools for measuring soil moisture, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how you use two of those tools. The first one is called a tensiometer, and the name of it tells you a little bit about how it works. So what that is a plastic tube with a porous cup at the base, and the tube can be made into a vacuum using a pump, and it has a meter on top. So how this works is this is going to be buried into the soil up to just below the meter, and the tube is filled generally with green water, dyed water, so you can see when the water has moved down and you need to refill it. So as the soil dries out, it pulls water out of the tube through this porous ceramic cup and creates a vacuum that the meter reads, and the meter tells you as the soil is drying down. So then that helps you schedule your irrigations. You're going to be burying them at some depth in the soil, and the depth is going to depend on the rooting zone of the particular plant. So if you're growing lettuce or onions, your rooting zone is very shallow, so you're not going to bury it very deep. So you might not want, this is a 12-inch tensiometer, you might only want a 6-inch one. For something that has a little bit deeper roots, a 12-inch would do. If you have fairly deep soil, maybe you want an 18 or a 24-inch. We don't have really deep soil in this area, but there are 36-inch tensiometers too. When we're going to install either a tensiometer or the matrix block, first thing is you're going to try to take all the vegetation off the surface of the soil, because you're going to dig the soil out and replace it the way it was so that you're reading what the tree roots look like. So we've got lots of mulch here, as well as some green vegetation on the orchard floor, which is good for the trees and good for conserving moisture, but we've got to remove that before we start digging the hole. And one of the easiest ways to dig a hole is with a soil auger, but a spade will also work very well. So this is a clay soil auger. So it's a tall tool, and it has pretty sharp blades at the bottom for cutting open the soil, and it's for clay because it's open. If it were for sand, this would be much more closed because the sand falls apart. Clay soils stick together. So that's one tool. A spade like this can also work just as well. So we'll start with the soil auger because that's easy in terms of the size of the hole, what you need to get in there, and it takes a little bit less energy to make the hole. So basically you're going to turn it into the soil, and we have a few rocks here, so we have some impediments, but we're getting soil out. So what we're going to do then is we're going to take this upper soil, we're going to lay it in a pile, and we're going to, every time we take some out, we're going to lay it in order that we took it out, so we know how to make it go back in the hole so it most resembles the tree roots. Alright, so we're going to talk about the tensiometer now. So, what do you need to do to set it up? What you do is 24 hours before you're going to put it in the ground, you're going to, you're going to fill the tube. And it doesn't actually take very much water to fill the tube. So now it's filled, And the water's green, so you can see when it's going down in the tube here, and you would replace the water as it diminishes in the tube. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take some soil from the bottom of the hole and we're going to make a slurry out of it. We're going to make it into mud, and we're going to use the mud to cover the tip of the tube so that we know it's in really good contact with the soil from the bottom of the hole. So it looks like that. Then we're going to put a little bit of soil back in the bottom of the hole, and we're going to place the tensiometer into the hole, and you can push it down gently into the soil that's there. We want the base just below the meter to be at soil surface. So we've got the tensiometer in there. We're going to start filling the hole from the soil at the bottom of the hole. So we're going to place it in there and get some in there, and then get it packed down. So you do need a hole big enough you can get your arm into it so that you can make sure that the soil is really holding onto the meter so that it's reading what the actual soil is like. So that involves at least pushing down the soil enough that you've got a good seal. It's also important to be sure that you're not leaving a depression around the tube. So right now there's a depression. You can't stop filling it now because if you've got sprinklers, micro sprinklers, water's going to collect here, and this is going to read that it's much wetter than the actual soil is. So the tensiometer works on the principle of making a vacuum in the tube. So this is the pump that you use to make a vacuum. And unlike other pumps, the important part of it is the pulling. The pushing needs to be very gentle because you're trying to create a vacuum in the tube. So once you've got the tensiometer installed and it's well placed in the soil, you take the cover off, and what you're going to try to do is make sure that there's no bubbles in the water. So as I said, pushing is very gentle, pulling is the important part of it. So you're trying to see if you've got any bubbles in the water. And we're pretty good because this one has been wet for a while. So you just keep pulling it until you aren't getting any more bubbles moving and it starts to get hard to pull. So that means you've got a good seal in there, and you don't take it off abruptly. There's this little knob here that releases the vacuum. Then you can remove the pump easily. And then you just replace the lid and you're set to go. If you have to take the lid off to add more water, again, you've got to pull a vacuum with the pump. So you've got the meter in the soil, it's solidly in there, and now you want to think about how it's going to operate. Right now, it's reading just above zero. It's actually moving up a little bit. So what happens is when it's fully saturated, which it is, or was, it reads 0. As the soil dries down, the meter goes around to the left and up to 100, which is really, really, really dry, way drier than a plant could survive. So as it dries down, the meter moves, and for each kind of plant, there's a parameter, a range in which it's good soil moisture for the plant. So it's important to understand that there are two parts of this tensiometer that are fragile. One is the meter. You don't want to bang it hard, tap it, hit it, because that can damage the mechanism. The second part that's fragile is the porous ceramic cup at the bottom of the tensiometer. So if you knock this, you could crack the ceramic cup and then it's not going to read properly. So what you want to think about doing is protecting it somehow so that it doesn't get weed whacked, run over by the tractor, or just stepped on or kicked. So often people will use a bucket with the bottom cut out over it, red, yellow, green, something that's a very obvious color to protect it. Or another really good way is to use a cement block that has holes in it that you can set right around it. It's heavy enough that it can't be moved easily.